So the next lecture is on questionnaire design. We're getting to the last part of this lecture on market research. So I'll work through these elements that can help you come up with the right questions in the right order to come up with a questionnaire that works well and captures meaningful data for you if you're conducting a survey. Now, first of all, this is the process that you are expected to follow if you are conducting a survey and in your questionnaire design. Once the decision has been made to do your quantitative study, the process consists of 4 stages. And the first one is your survey preparations, which consists of your questionnaire design and your sample selection, which we've gone over already. The second part is your field study, and then you'd be cleaning and treating the data, and then focusing on the presentation of the results and recommendations. Now, 2, 3, and 4 aren't elements that we'll go over in this module. You won't be looking at those things until the second semester. But the fact of the matter is, in coming up with your questionnaires and identifying the right sample, you need to be considering those 3 points to make sure that your questions are well designed and that the sample of people you are planning to survey are easy and accessible based on those last 3 points. So with your questionnaire, you're getting to the construction stage, and you've thought about all of the elements in how and who you're going to recruit, where you're going to recruit them, and for what purpose. And so you go with you start designing your questionnaire, and you really you're looking at what's already known in the literature, what key points that you don't need to test or don't need to evaluate, and you put down a list of the topics that you're going to approach or you're going to evaluate in your survey and the subtopics from within those. So importantly, you want to treat them on a hierarchical basis. You want to start with the more general overarching umbrella themes and then break it down into specific points as you go further and deeper into your survey. You want to essentially try and converge your questions to go from the general in how things happen in general down to the private individual, i.e., how is this relevant for you? The other element with questionnaire design is the order in which you place the questions has a great impact onto the quality of the data that you have. If you have specific questions on individuals, identifying all what's known as implication questions at the beginning, these are things such as gender, age, income, all of these specific questions about the individual which make the individual uncomfortable. And by doing so, it means you run the risk of conducting a survey which is not going to get good data, because if the respondent feels defensive because you've asked them personal questions about themselves to begin with, then it's going to make it much more difficult to develop a rapport with them and to get good quality data. So you start with your screening questions at the beginning, if you indeed use screening questions, and you conclude down. So you converge onto your implication questions towards the end. Importantly, you should always pilot test your questionnaire to make sure that it works in the way that you wish it to. When you're designing questions for your survey, you want to start by thinking of specific traps that you may get caught out of. You want to think of particular references to key points of the topic that you're trying to investigate. You want to avoid ambiguous questions, questions that aren't clear, questions that are technical, full of jargon, and specifically, one of the main failings of many questionnaires is what's referred to as a double-barreled question. And a double-barreled question is where you ask 2 things in the one question. And it could be about, are you happy and satisfied with life? Well, is it possible to respond to that question, to be happy but unsatisfied? Or is it possible to be satisfied but unhappy? Um, if you think those concepts aren't necessarily the same, there's probably a relationship between them, but are they the same? No, they're not. So if you ask a double-barreled question, what if you're feeling particularly satisfied but not happy? And if you're asked to rate your level of satisfaction and happiness on a scale of 1 to 5, you could write a 3, being that it's the midpoint, but you could be exceptionally happy and exceptionally dissatisfied, meaning you'd provide a 1 and a 5 to each of those criterion. So each of those criteria. So the average of 3 would still be would probably be appropriate, but it wouldn't be an accurate reflection of how you're of how you're feeling, given that those two parts of the question could and should be surveyed individually. You want to minimize, certainly at the start of your survey, implying questions. Respect the hierarchy of behavior. So the first questions that you're asking people are about their knowledge of the topic that you're, are they aware of it more specifically? Are they aware of it? What do they know about it? Those sorts of things. You want to test if they're people who can provide the information that you are interested in learning about. So you need to make sure that these people are capable of providing the information that you want. Secondly, you're inquiring about the respondent's image or perceptions of the topic. So it's not just a level of awareness, but what they think of it. Then you're asking them for things like what are their expectations, what do they want to do, what are their demands, and then you focus on elements of their behavior, demographics and those sorts of things. These questions, demographics and the like, they're the things that always come towards the end. Anything that's sensitive or potentially technical, so specific to the individual, they need to be done at the end of the survey. So keep your questions simple, clear, and logical to make it easy for the person responding to the survey to follow. When you're conducting a survey and you've got international considerations to bear in mind, i.e. you or will, you need to, you've got an added level of complexity that you need to take into account when trying to design your survey. First of all, you're thinking about the mode of collection of the information. Are you doing it electronically via a soft questionnaire, or are you doing it in hard formats by getting someone to go out there and interact with each person they get a survey response from? The comparability of the data from one period to the next, what you collected, even using the same questions today may be completely different if you've collected it 5 years ago, even from the same place. If perhaps buildings have changed or something like that, then you don't know if perhaps a gentrification of an area, you don't know if the people responding are similar in nature or similar in character or behaviours as they may have been 5 years ago. Um, the you want to consider things such as metric equivalence, whether, if, for example, in the US they deal in miles of distance and Fahrenheit instead of Celsius. You want to make sure that you've checked for and allowed those things. I woke up the other night with 32 degrees written on my phone, and I was thinking, wow, gee, 32 degrees is quite hot, but of course that was Fahrenheit. So it's just recognizing that there are different measures in different parts of the world, and you need to be familiar with the ones that you are using in your region and how they may differ from others around the place. Equivalence of translation, there's a process referred to as back translation, where what happens is if you need to translate across languages, you get a native speaker to translate from the foreigner's language into the native speaker's language, and then you get a native speaker of the original language to translate back from the translated language. It's effectively a double process, but it means that you can be relatively sure, or certainly more sure than you would have been beforehand, of communicating the type of message that you wish to communicate. If you set up your survey or experiment with these criteria in mind, you'll have well prepared for the submission of your proposal. Questionnaires, essentially, they need to be well designed and readable. They all have to have a clear heading on them, an introduction or a letter of accompaniment, basically saying this is who we are, this is what we're doing, this is how long the survey is, or approximately how long it should take you to finish. Contact details for the person responsible for the survey. If it's you, that's fine. Someone to get in contact with if the survey respondent is not happy with their dealing or dealings with you. All of these sorts of things are designed to help facilitate the administration of the survey. And why you've selected someone, explaining that it could be random, could be because they're on that place, point in time, could be because you're doing a survey on potentially a new product being developed, and you found that this market might be particularly interested in that. So just giving them the reason for selection will certainly help, and may in fact encourage them to respond to you. Um, whether you're going to acquire contact details or not, the obligations of the respondent, the time frame, how long it's going to take, the use of the results. And then you're looking at elements of questionnaire design which help which help you measure the responses and differences in responses in your in consumers. So, do you want a closed survey, which is either single choice or it could be multiple choice? Open-ended questions where you are asking people to respond at lib. There's no specific responses available. Classification questions to indicate if someone fills in one element that they could accordingly fill in other parts of the survey. Notation, classification. Excuse me. They were filtering questions. Classification questions are in fact you're at a part of a place or part of a particular group, so therefore you fit into that classification. Notation meaning do you want people to indicate that that they have to fill out details like a postcode or something like that. Scale questions, filtering questions, as I explained before, and you should definitely do a pilot study beforehand. Survey some people before you send out the survey who fit into the category that you're trying to survey, and see how well the survey works, given that people should be able to answer it easily. If people stop, have some problems answering questions, or have to ask you questions about the questions, then you know the survey probably needs more work. Now, here's one type of a survey question that you could put in place as a way to conduct your survey. Now, these are called Likert scales or Likert scales, depending on what part of the world you're from. And you can see that Likert scales essentially have a question, and the respondent has to choose between whether they're very satisfied or not at all satisfied, and responding to the number accordingly about whether they're satisfied or not. In this case, this questionnaire really could do with some extra work. I mean, first of all, question 3, even if you don't speak French, you can probably see that that question definitely shouldn't is multi-barreled and shouldn't be presented in that way. Question number 13, for example, talks about benefiting from competitive pricing. Who doesn't want to who doesn't want to benefit from competitive pricing? You've got to wonder whether that's a relevant question or not. Question 15 is leading. Benefit from the strength of an international bank. And it's like, well, this doesn't seem like a survey, as more like a promotional document for the bank. Further, there are so many problems with this. First of all, the question numbers are 1 to 4. Now, which one is the highest and which one is the lowest? And you might be able to look at the result there and go, well, hang on, it says it over here on the left. But if you have to keep checking, if you weren't sure and you had to keep checking, it's obviously not clear. You could have anchor points on each end of the questionnaire, which would certainly help. Additionally, why one is satisfied, 4 is unsatisfied here. You may have protocols which have them either going around the other way, or declining in value, with 4 being the most important and 1 being the least. Those sorts of elements depend on culture, but there are also other parts about this particular survey which little things you wouldn't pick up on. You've got a choice of 4 responses. Well, what if you're actually you're indifferent to it? If you're indifferent to it, where does your response go? And see, that's one of the key challenges you'll face. So you've got this you've got this situation where you don't know from one, there's no midpoint and there's no choice not to answer. So the results you'll be getting from this sort of questionnaire, there are so many challenges with it. It doesn't matter that you can get good numbers if the questions they're asking outright aren't effective, can't be managed and can't be compared to other things. Then it makes for a fairly boring questionnaire. This is just a different way of looking at the same theme. Instead of having 0 to 4 or 1 to 4 as the previous one was, this has two binomes on each end of the scale, with one being the antonym of the other. And so you've got some way of people being able to respond. They can respond by circling a number or crossing something out or having a pen go through at the part that's most appropriate for them. And you can see that those questions essentially go from one side or the other. So it's a trade-off, either being one or another. Now these aren't very good scale weights though. You've got dear versus inexpensive is the first one. Do you want something expensive or inexpensive? Well, don't know many people are going to turn around and go inexpensive, but I could be wrong. Do you want something modern or traditional? That's at least appropriate, and they're antonyms of each other. Do you want something of good or poor quality? Now, I can't imagine a single person saying they'd prefer something of poor quality. That just doesn't make sense. Beautiful or ugly, ingenious or not ingenious, non-durable or durable, honest or a liar. See, so it's basically looking at all of those responses, I think only one of them is particularly worthwhile to use this Osgood scale. Filtering questions are where you provide information to the respondent. You can see if the respondent gets an answer in question F0 here that is 1, 3 or 5, then they stop the survey. Don't waste any more time on it. It's not that they're not interested, and whenever someone gets refused from a survey, funnily enough, they tend to take it hard. So it's better to just let them know that it's not you, it's them. Uh, The instructions are written all over these. This is a very good survey. Makes it easy for people to follow from one point to the next, and so it's definitely a system you may want to consider in the design of your own surveys. Okay, so you've got the point where you've got a series of questions trying to put together, but you've got to be sure that they fit in with the design of the questionnaire. How are you going to administrate it? Is it going to be a face-to-face survey? And if so, are respondents going to respond by writing on the spot? Are they going to respond orally, or are they going to be presented to the individual to do in their own time and asking them to send it back? Difficult to know. Okay, you've got should the questionnaire or should it be conducted in a residence or a workplace, consider in the street or a caravan or a room. These are all different options available to you. And the fact is, each one, it's not that you need to know the specifics of each one, but you need to recognize there are different elements you need to consider based on where you're doing it. You do it in someone's residence, they often get interrupted by people around them in the household, which makes it hard for them to focus. Workplace can work, but you might have business providers that aren't comfortable with you taking time off or with you taking time out from the workplace to answer surveys. All of these sorts of things are different considerations and need to be borne in mind. Start by breaking up into your question topics. You should update all of your questions and then merge them together in one file. Check for flow and consistency, print it out, test your questionnaire as a pilot, plan its implementation to the field, and then get started on your proposal. The use of a particular tool in the design of your proposal and putting it together isn't important. The key element is coming up with a good question. So how do you identify a good question? I'll always defer to that one and say, well, that's your job to tell me. So how do you decide between how many and what type of questions to ask? Well, that's another matter altogether. The goal, of course, is to develop a questionnaire. So you're trying to help solve a particular research question, and you're aiming to identify the questions you need to help you reach the answer, help you answer the research question. And you want enough questions to be complete, but not imposing. So essentially, you need to make sure that you test the questionnaire as a pilot study to make sure that it works and works in the manner in which you believe it should. And so that concludes the elements of questionnaire design. The next lecture will be on the reviewing process, and the last element of the process